Hello, and welcome to the Detroit Way, a Detroit sports podcast. I'm your host, Chad Marriott. And this week, we have a few things to get into. The biggest thing, though, even though the Lions are back in the preseason, the biggest storyline is still around the Tigers and the continued struggles. Now, it's not as bad as it was a few weeks ago with the big losing streak, but they still are playing a little inconsistent, a little up, a little down. It's kind of been all around the spectrum. The relief pitching, which was the big thing the Tigers tried to address at the deadline, doesn't seem to have been solved. The strategy was to see if you could get a bunch of guys to try and fix the problem, because there were so many issues going on, but it doesn't seem to have alleviated the big issues. Kyle Finnegan's been good. Outside of that, the results have been inconsistent. And the one thing I want to try to avoid is the one-game reactions, because in Paddock's first game with the Tigers looked great. The second game, it was like, oh boy, what is this? And then in the third game, again, he looked pretty good. Short outing, but the results were good. And Morton kind of had a similar thing. Although his second game, the strikeouts were high, but he had a couple bad pitches, which happens. So I think with both of them, I think the thing to look at is the long-term trend over the remainder of the season. And there are larger sample size issues. Riley Green has started to pick up a little bit. The long-term trend with him is the strikeouts. I know that in baseball now it's like, the strikeouts don't really matter as long as you're hitting big numbers. But this is not sustainable, the number of strikeouts and the low walks. Nothing's going to really change about that in a significant way this season, but for him that's going to have to be a big off-season program. How do I keep this new swing trajectory to keep these power numbers but not strike out so much? How does he balance that? That's going to have to be his big long-term thing, because it's not sustainable to strike out, to lead the league in strikeouts, be on pace to break some records in that way. It seems the problem is that they're not getting good pitching and good hitting on the same nights. It's kind of frustrating, really. The recent loss to the White Sox, they scored 6 runs, and I know some of those came late, but that doesn't matter. You score 6 runs, you should win a game. In some of these games, it's been really, really hard to win when your starting pitcher is spotting the other team 5 runs. That's hard, and it's demoralizing, I think. And, the gritty Tigers are still there, and they play to the last out, but I think over time it's getting frustrating, because before, like last season, you were getting some really good results from the pitching chaos. And after today's game against the White Sox, Troy Melton belongs in the starting rotation. I know the bullpen really needs that swing and miss guy, because they don't have that. But looking at how Flaherty's pitched, how Paddock's pitched, how Morton's pitched, can you say any of those 3 deserve a starting rotation spot ahead of Troy Melton at this point in the season with what they need? No. I don't think there's a good argument for that. He belongs in that rotation. I don't know who you would kick out, or if you go to the 6-man rotation, which they're never going to do because AJ Hinch is very much against it. But they're going to have to do something. I know that Flaherty, his recent comment is, I think, fairly accurate, where he said, at some point I can't keep saying I'm getting unlucky. You know, you miss your spots. It's Morton had pitched a good game the other day, but basically got shelled for 2-3 missed pitches that they did damage on. And at the end of the day, the results, matter more than the expected results. The analytics arguments, at some point, it has to show up. And then some other notes, long-term kind of things, is we saw the end of the Matt Manning era, which is, like I said earlier, the small sample sizes. Those first two stretches that he came up, it was the end of one season and I think the start of the next season a few years ago. And it was a very small sample size. He looked pretty good. There was things to work on, but it seemed like, the results are going to be there. And then the injuries, and then the more injuries, and then he came back from those, and the velocity was down, so he adjusted something for the velocity to come back up, and then the control is gone, and it just seemed one thing after another, and it didn't work out, and that's unfortunate. And it had me thinking about Sawyer Gipson-Long with the similar thing, where he had that really good stretch, and then he got hurt. He comes back from the injury, and the results aren't there anymore. And is that another quick high, injury low player? I hope not. It would be great to see him be able to take Troy Melton's spot as the swing and miss guy in the bullpen, so Melton can go back to the rotation. And even if that's like what they did in the game today, where Melton pitched the first 5, I think, and then Gipson-Long came in for a bit, it's not so bad. I think that could work. Looking at September call-ups, just really early for that, but I was thinking Hao-Yu Lee, third base, got some pop in his bat. That might be the player that you could see in September come up and be super helpful, in the final push, because I think this season, one of the things that's been hurting, jumping ahead a little bit here, is the right-handed platoon player. They don't really have right-handed bat. They don't really have that. And Hao-Yu Lee would kind of maybe help alleviate that problem. He's not going to solve it. That's going to have to be something they look at for next year. Matt Vierling injured again, but hasn't really been ever able to really get going this season. He had the big home run just recently, but then he's back to the injured list. Andy Ibanez came back up, looked really good, and he's cooled back off. And Jahmai Jones had there was a stretch where he was really good and cooled back off. I know that Justin Henry Malloy wouldn't be able to really help in the field, and he's not a really AJ Hinch type of player in that he's not a great fielder, and he doesn't have the positional versatility. But he'd also, I think, be somebody that would be considered for that September call-up. If not Hao-Yu Lee, maybe it's him. For pitching, I have no idea. Probably another bullpen guy. Maybe Hanafi will be back, which I don't know why they sent him down. That was an odd one. Or Dylan Smith, maybe. Again, I think a couple of guys that actually do have some decent swing and miss numbers back down in the minors, but that's an organizational decision. And then I wanted to talk about Wenzel Perez. Has been great this year. Somebody that missed spring training, and when he came up, he's been great. He's been the surprise breakout player. Particularly in spring training, he was a name a lot of people were talking about wasn't going to make the cut. Uh, behind, I should say, a lot of players that he has massively outperformed. It's small numbers, but he's been better at the plate, far better at the plate than Parker Meadows has been. He's been better, I think, in the field and at the plate. I'd have to look up in the field numbers, but than Matt Vierling. He's been better than Andy Ibanez. He's been better than Jahmai Jones. He's been better than a lot of guys. And he hits well from both sides this year, which has been awesome. He's been really the breakout player and kind of putting himself more in that young Torkelson, Riley Green category than the Trey Sweeney, Jace Young, Justin Henry Malloy category. He's kind of broke out from those other players, and Malloy being one that he kind of usurped. And the improvement in the field has gone a long way for that. I know some people would want to say Dylan Dingler, and I can't argue with that. He's been the breakout player, I think, but not the surprise. I don't think it's as surprising because we all knew he was going to be on the team. There was this talk about Wenzel Perez maybe being the odd man out, but he's well solidified, I think, now. And what's great about him is when's the last time the Tigers had a catcher that was really good both sides of the plate, behind the plate and up to bat? Alex Avila had that one really good year at the plate. And I'm hoping this isn't the same thing with Dylan Dingler this season. But really consistently, the last time they had a player like that was Pudge. It would be great to have a young, good catcher for a good amount of time in Dingler. And you could see one of these other prospects coming up and replacing Jake Rogers, who love Jake Rogers, phenomenal catcher. But the hitting, it almost feels like sometimes you could just chalk up and out and just skip the at bat. I guess at the very least, maybe you can foul off some pitches and get the guy's count up. It's been rough at the plate this year for him. Yeah. But all that conversation to say, there's some things going wrong this year, but there is a lot to like about the Tigers long term. And that's a frustrating thing because the city hasn't had a title since 2008. So nobody wants to hear about the future. Oh, we're going to be good in the future. Somebody needs to win a title. The Tigers and the Lions have the best shot at that right now. But it feels like somebody's got to break this so we can really focus on this long term, Because I want all these teams. Every fan should. You want them to be good for a long time, a good, strong foundation, a good organization, rather than these huge booms and busts where one year, maybe they make it for a year or two and miss out. And the farm system is so poorly managed that we have to wait another 10 years for them to be good. And I harp on that because we went through that. All those teams did that. So, and that's really about it for the Tigers. And it's just kind of like, it is what it is. I mean, I don't know what they do, how they get better. At this point, you just have to hope some guys break out of the funk. You hope Flaherty. You hope Green. You hope anything. You want to see them turn it around. I don't know how it happens. That's why they get paid the big bucks and I don't. So let's turn to the Lions for a bit. The big takeaways from the preseason. Just quick disclaimer. Preseason in sports just doesn't mean anything. I don't know if it ever did. It feels like it used to have some significance. What's going on in practice behind, behind the scenes, behind what we're seeing. Uh, what's going on at practice matters a lot more than what's going on in these games. Maybe a little bit needle, shift from here to here, but yeah. But I will say this: I'm going to say some blasphemy. Brad Holmes, I think, we've identified his first big draft miss, and I think that's Hendon Hooker with that third round pick. Hit a couple of fumbles. I mean, the mobility is nice though, but we're getting along into his career, and they drafted him to be a backup quarterback for Jared Goff, and it does not look like it's working out. At some point, you gotta get on the horse, you gotta get on the boat, whatever metaphor you so choose. He has to play better. I mean, that's just the end of it. He has to play mistake-free football. That's what you want to see in a backup. Now, the Hall of Fame game, Kyle Allen helped him out a lot, but he looked a lot better in this last one against the Falcons. Kyle Allen, that is, which made me feel a lot better and probably puts Hendon Hooker in a worse spot than he was before. Isaac Tesla, wide receiver, looked good. Jake Bates is still Jake Bates. Looking at the O-line, it looks like they're going to roll with Decker, Mahogany, Glasgow, Rutledge, and Sewell. And we'll have to see how those guards work out. The new starters, a second-year player and a rookie. And Glasgow's played at center before. He kind of had a down year last year, so that's 3 spots that we're really going to, the fans, the organization's really going to have to find that answer to. The other big question is going to be, who's that other edge rusher? Who's going to step up? It looks Marcus Davenport, they love him. I hope he plays more than 2 games this year. That'd be fantastic. And that's really the problem for him. Is I think when he's out there, he's a good football player, but is he going to be out there? So, and it's hard to tell. And the injury list is already piling up again, and I'm like, I know it's preseason, so some of them might be precautionary, but as a fan, it's like, are we going to go through this again? I know it's football, injuries happen, but this just seems excessive. Because it's the same thing with the interior. Tyreek Williams for Aleem McNeil till he comes back, whenever that might be. And the same thing. I was trying to look and think, who else could it be that steps up? No, they're hurt. They're hurt. So, I don't know. Hopefully somebody unexpected, maybe. Like, saw a player that was drafted later, or one of these undrafted rookies or something like that. The offense always gets a lot of excitement going into seasons, but I feel pretty confident. Even though changing offensive coordinators, I don't think there should be a big worry as long as the offensive line holds up, because Jared Goff needs an offensive line. He has plenty of weapons, but he needs time. And he doesn't do well with the shifting pockets or adjusting the pocket or any of that. Maybe he got a lot better, or he might have to with the new pieces coming in and the new arrangement. And real quick touch on the Pistons. Some schedule drops. We got the Christmas Day, the Martin Luther King Day, and the stupid thing where some of the games are going to be on Peacock. And that's great. It's business, money, whatever. Sucks for the fans. I don't want to have to get 8 million streaming services so that I can watch my team. It feels like the people that are kind of out of luck are the fans of teams rather than fans of just the sport in general. Because if you're a fan of the sport in general, so what? I can't watch this game? Big deal. It's one game. But if you're a fan of the team, you want to watch every game. And the schedule, and then today they did the NBA Cup schedule. I'm getting really tired of the trying to stretch out these schedule releases and keep they got to keep the league in the news. The NFL does the same thing. Plan it all out so they're never out of the news. The NBA is trying to stretch out the schedule release to stay in the news for a number of days. It's dumb. Just release a schedule so I can figure out when I can go. I guess tomorrow. Probably when you're listening, the schedule will be out and this complaint will be pointless. So I do have a little bit of time left, and I want to talk about something. When is it okay for a star player to leave or request a trade, etc., from your team? Now, of course, always, because they have the right to do that. It's annoying, I think, sometimes for fans. But the case I wanted to think of was Matthew Stafford and Grant Hill, and looking at using that as kind of a case study to explore the different fan reactions. Now, at the time, you look at the trajectory of these two players. When Grant Hill left, fans were angry. When Matthew Stafford left, fans were thinking, "Yeah, I get it. This is rough. This organization has not been good." And then as time went on, both players, the trade of both players worked out great for Detroit. Grant Hill turned into Ben Wallace and a title. And Matthew Stafford turned into literally filling out a bunch of massive holes on this team, on the Lions, and really rebuilding. And to dig deeper, Stafford was here for 12 years, and nobody can say that he's not one of the toughest players that ever played in Detroit. Played through a lot of injuries, and he's the best quarterback in franchise history. That's just statistically true, factually true, eye test true. It's just, it is what it is. You can like Goff better because he's here now and he's your guy, but if we're being realistic with ourselves, Stafford's the better player. It's like you got a lower paying job with better hours, and you're like, well, I like this job better. Well, I mean, you miss the money sometimes. Come on. And it really comes down to, for him, I think, the situation and the result is where these things veer. Right? Because Stafford comes in, and the Lions are coming off the worst season in the history of the NFL. They're organizationally embarrassing. And he comes into that, and they get to the playoffs. The Lions get to the playoffs. There's no playoff success. Albeit, he never had the team around him to have that type of success. And I know that's why people are, oh, Jared Goff got us a playoff win. And I really don't like the quarterback-centric talking about NFL teams. That bothers me, because there's very few teams where the quarterback is the live or die. I know you have to have a good quarterback of a certain quality to be good now in the NFL, but Goff isn't in that tier of players where he's changing the game. Because if we can just go down the list, did Matthew Stafford ever have as good of a wide receiver core? Not wide receiver, because I know Megatron was better than anybody they have now, but the whole core, and including the tight ends, so including Sam Laporta. No? Okay. Running backs. Did he ever have running backs as good as either Gibbs or Montgomery? No. Did he ever have an offensive line this good? No. Did he ever have a coach as good as Dan Campbell? No. Did he ever have did he ever have coaches this good? No. The whole staff. right? Even the organization where they're coming in and doing things right now. He didn't have that. When he left, and it would be foolish to ignore the Matt Patricia destroying the culture, what little culture the Lions even had. The players, when he got fired, the players threw a party. I wouldn't want to. It's a sour taste. It makes sense to me that he wanted to leave. But you look at Grant Hill on the flip side, similar thing. He played through some injuries, probably hurt his career long term. I think Stafford probably did the same thing. I think skill wise, he probably lost something with being bludgeoned to death, as the offensive coordinators on these teams said, let's do empty backfield, 4-step drop back. Everybody's running we're just running a Hail Mary play every time. Everybody's running straight down the field. Good luck, Matthew. But Hill was hurt, had the same lack of playoff success, but he was only here 6 seasons, so half the time. But he left, and there was a lot of consternation, and Pistons won a title. People don't care. The other thing to consider with Hill that makes it a little unique is he had the opportunity to come back for the 2007-2008 season. He said in an interview that it was down to that in Phoenix, and he took less money to go to Phoenix because he was worried about being a shell of himself, and like that would have mattered if he. It's actually kind of an interesting case. If he came, how it would have changed his legacy in Detroit if he had come back and that had been the piece that helped the Pistons beat the Celtics and get back to the finals and win a title. Like if Hill had been able to do that. Now he's kind of like he's one of the really talented players. He was great when he was here. Kind of think of that time as, they weren't very good. Who cares? Right? Because they won a title after that. And if you don't win a title and you leave like that, you kind of get forgotten in history. And the big thing for that is when Grant Hill got to Detroit, it was just shortly after Isaiah Thomas, the greatest player in franchise history, retired. So you're kind of taking that mantle of an organization that has established success with titles with the bad boys, and that's what he's coming from, and that's the expectation. And my question with thinking about that, is that fair? Is that fair to Grant Hill that he looks worse for leaving Detroit than Matthew Stafford because the Lions suck or have sucked historically? Big fan. Love them. Watch them every Sunday, no matter what. Or Thursday or Monday or Saturday or whatever now, because it's pretty soon the NFL will be every day of the week. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. The question really is that fair to his legacy, that because the Pistons had established a foundation of success, even though they were bad when they drafted him, but you had Isaiah Thomas walking out the door, Grant Hill walking in the door, and it's like, you're the man. You're the one that gets us there next. This kid before came here and gave everything to the city. Injuries got us those 2 titles. It's your turn. And it didn't happen. Whereas Stafford, the feeling when he left was, I get it. I sit and watch these games. I get it. If I could somehow manage to give this up, I would. It's like torture. And I think that really affects, because once the Lions started to play well, and it feels like Dan Campbell has built this culture of success, that now we as Lions fans are turning on, Matt Stafford, you're a jerk for leaving. How dare you? How could you do that? And some of the comments I think have been blown way out of proportion. I didn't like the stuff about Kirby Joseph. I didn't get that. But the thing about him saying, I'm a bad guy now, and it sucked to be booed, and I got to rip their hearts out. Yeah, it's his job. He has to do that. He plays for a different team. You don't have to root for him when he plays the Lions, but this thing where everybody's like hating on him now, I think is a little weird. And I know I've kind of flipped my opinion on that. So it is an interesting question, and I've been kind of wrestling with it lately. I don't know if I'm going to come to an answer. I think that perception, if the Lions win a Super Bowl, I don't think people will be angry about Stafford leaving anymore. They'll be like, whatever, we won. But I do want to hit again, the reason why the Lions are winning now isn't because Goff is better than Stafford. It's because the Lions are better than they were when Stafford was here. Organizationally, talent, staff, ownership, all up and down. Better. And Goff's good, just not great. And one last thing on that name to throw in there to compare is Justin Verlander was traded and didn't want to go, and that trade did not work out. And nobody seems to have any issues with that. That was just blamed because the trade didn't work out. I still like Verlander. I'm happy he got his title and won another Cy Young. That's great for him. But the trade didn't work out for us, so it's the organization's fault. Which I think in the reverse, for both Grant Hill and Matthew Stafford, I think that might have been the right response of who to be angry at when those things happened. Because the Pistons did not do a good job building a good team in the 90s around Grant Hill. They just didn't. They were soft. They didn't fill the other talent needs. And it's the same thing with Stafford and every other Lions team before that. So maybe the question is, when the star talent leaves, maybe we shouldn't be mad at the players. It sucks. It's okay to be disappointed and frustrated in the moment. But maybe it's the organization's fault for not doing what they needed to do to keep that player around or to have success while they were here. So, I don't know. Let me know where you come down on that issue. And this is the Detroit Way. See you next week.